is going on, football fans? Back at it with another New York Giants video as the draft is almost here. It's like a month away, less than a month away. I cannot wait until April 29th. So I figured I would jump into my first 7-round mock draft for the New York Giants, which is, of course, truly a 6-round mock draft. We don't have a 7th-round pick. The Giants have a 1st through 4th. They do not have a 5th, and then they have 2 6-round picks. So they only have 6 picks this year as opposed to last year with 10. Now, one thing a lot of you guys have asked me to do going into the offseason is the Gettleman Project, something I've done on this channel over the last 2 years leading up into the draft, and I was trying to think of things that I could do in terms of simulations, this, that, and the other thing. I said, you know what? Why not just do a whole bunch of 6-round mock drafts for the New York Giants? I know you guys will enjoy it. And what I'm going to do is all the different scenarios that I could see playing out in the first round. Scenarios like taking a wide receiver at 11, taking an offensive lineman at 11, taking an edge rusher at 11, taking a linebacker at 11, trading down, trading up, and any scenarios that you guys may have off the top of your head that you would like me to see simulate, put it in the comments below. Now, how did I orchestrate this draft? What was I looking for? Well, obviously, like any draft, I looked at need. And right now, as I've said several times, some of the needs that I identified for the New York Giants, offensive line, specifically interior offensive line, but also tackle. We don't know for sure if Barrett's going to be the long-term answer. Wide receiver, no doubt about it. Edge, I prioritize edge above wide receiver, but I'm just listing the needs. Edge, wide receiver, offensive line. I think we could use a running back. Saquon Barkley, we don't know if he's going to be 100%. We could use a running back in the later rounds, even though we brought in Devontae Booker. We're kind of thin at that area right now. Cornerback depth as well. You know, a lot of people look at James Bradbury and obviously Adoree Jackson, but Adoree Jackson has injury history. James Bradbury only has another year left on his contract after this year. So I could see corner depth in the 3rd to 5th round area. Several other positions. Interior defensive line is another need. So that is how I evaluated. The other things that I did was I kind of tried to find players that I felt fit the scheme. Obviously, the New York Giants, they stress versatility. I tried to find versatile players. Joe Judge also in last year's draft, I think, kind of looked for guys with a lot of intelligence, right? Darnay Holmes, remember, he was a chess champion. There was a lot of very smart prospects that the New York Giants brought in. So I, coupled all that, and I put it all together. Now, in my first mock draft, it should be no surprise if you watched my first round mock draft for the New York Giants where I'm going. And that is going to be Rashawn Slater for several reasons. Now, let me start off by saying I am not going to be upset if we take a wide receiver. I'm not going to be upset if we take Micah Parsons. I will not be upset if we trade down. But going into free agency, I was very outspoken, before I saw what they did, that I thought that we needed to get a wide receiver. We went out, we got 2 of them with John Ross and Kenny Golladay. We also lost our most consistent offensive lineman in Kevin Zeitler. Obviously, I think Andrew Thomas is going to progress this year and get better. I strongly believe in Andrew Thomas. But at the end of the day, this offensive line, yes, it performed fairly well in run blocking as the year went along. We surrendered the 2nd most sacks in all of football. Daniel Jones has been sacked 83 times in his first 26 starts. And sure, you could definitely point to part of the problem is Daniel Jones. But make no mistake about it, this offensive line still has a lot of growing to do. We brought in Rob Sale. A lot of us hope that could help take a big step up. But I look at Rashawn Slater, fills a need. No doubt about it. He's versatile. He could actually play all 5 spots on the offensive line. Many feel he projects better as a guard. His arm length is a little bit of a question. We're going to get more into that in a second. But I think he fills, in my opinion, our biggest need. And at 11, if he is in fact there, I think best player available meets need, or damn near close. Maybe there's 1 or 2 other players you could argue are better, but he's right in that area. Most people have him mocked in the top 10, top 15 for sure. So I think it's a really good fit for us. It fills what I think is our primary need, and he is one of the 2 or 3 most talented players on the board at that point in time. I think it's a match made in heaven if he's there at 11, and that's why I took Rashawn Slater. Now, in terms of what they had to say about him, this was at his pro day. The other thing I want to say about him that they don't really go into full detail here, he is, by most accounts, the most technically advanced and skilled offensive lineman in this year's class. He's also highly intelligent out of Northwestern. Many actually have him going above Penei Sewell at this point in time, and if Sewell was there, I obviously would take him in this mock draft. I just think it's more probable that Rashawn Slater will be on the board. Checking in at 6'4", 304 pounds, Slater displayed the kind of well-rounded skill set that explains why scouts believe he could play any position on the offensive line. In addition to tossing up a robust 33 bench reps, he clocked an impressive time of 4.88 on the 40 and a 7.48 in the 3-cone drill. Slater's arm length, which has been a hot topic of conversation among evaluators, came in at 33 inches. That's below average for NFL offensive tackles, which will lead to more talk about Slater potentially moving inside. And if you look at our guard position right now, if in fact that is what the New York Giants decide to do, you have Will Hernandez, which we don't know if he'll be in the long-term plans. He's a free agent next year. There's been word that the New York Giants don't have supreme confidence in him. And you have Shane Lemieux, who definitely struggled last year in pass protection. Rashawn Slater would instantly become our best interior offensive lineman with the ability to move out to the right tackle position if, in fact, we don't believe that Matt Barrett is the answer there. The Giants have expressed confidence in him, as they should. They spent the 99th overall pick on him last year. But regardless, it's nice to have that insurance, and maybe they feel that Slater will be best suited at that tackle position and possibly move Barrett to the inside. Whatever it may be, it gives the Giants a lot more options on that offensive line where we desperately need to make sure we can evaluate Daniel Jones this year. And to be able to do that, we have to block a lot better. Slater could help accomplish that with the departure of Kevin Zeitler. Next prospect I want to talk about in the second round. Now, the second biggest need, in my opinion, at this point in time, is an edge rusher. And that's exactly what I did here. There's a couple of edge rushers I could have went with. I went with the guy that's soaring up draft charts. He had a really good pro day, and I think he's a beautiful schematic fit. And that is Joe Trion out of Washington. He stands at 6'5", 259 pounds. I've even seen some mocks with him going in the back end of the first, so some may argue he may not be here in the four. I think we're picking 42, but I think it's very possible he could be. He could even go later. Who knows? You don't know with mock drafts. It's a guessing game, but he's a guy that really impressed at his pro day, and he's a player that I do think would fit what we're looking to do very well. Now, he didn't play this year, sat out due to the virus, but if you look at his stats in 2018 and 19 out of Washington, he had just 20 total tackles his first year with a sack. Second year, he got more playing time, in which he had 41 total tackles and 8 sacks with 12.5 tackles for a loss. Now, why do I think he fits the scheme very well? Well, these are some of the strengths to his game. Long, athletic frame. Has just about every trait teams look for outside on the edge. Decent play strength and is tough enough at the point of attack. Ability to punch and shed tight ends quickly when his hands are right. Hand skills flash when battling run blockers. Glides and moves with proper knee, and it goes on and on about his technique. But the thing at the bottom is really what gets me. They say he is very good in coverage, or at least very capable of being strong in coverage, and he is very good off the edge. And everything that I read about him, they feel like he could fit in multiple schemes, which is exactly what the New York Giants would be looking to do with an edge rusher prospect. So I think Joe Trion could make a lot of sense for the New York Giants. Now, the second round, it's a guessing game. And as you go further along, it becomes even more of a guessing game. In the third round, one prospect that I really like, again, versatility. He's played both on the inside and the out as a wide receiver. I tried to get the New York Giants some punch there. I know a lot of fans want to go wide receiver all 7 rounds of this draft, or 6 rounds of this draft, I should say. But I do think he's a good wide receiver. He's a sure-handed wide receiver. He comes from USC, and he actually reminds me of a former third-round pick of the New York Giants out of USC back in 2007 when we ended up winning our Super Bowl. I think he was a third-round pick, and that was Steve Smith. Again, not a guy with superior athletic ability, but just a very good football player. I also read several things that Amon-Ra St. Brown is very intelligent, and he's a willing blocker, actually an above-average blocker for a wide receiver, and he's pretty sure-handed. Let's jump into some of the things. Played 3 years well at USC, only played 6 games this past season. His sophomore season is where he really shined. In his freshman year, he did have 60 catches for 750 yards, with 3 scores. His second year in 2019, he had 77 catches for 1,042 yards and 6 scores. Last year, in just 6 games, he did have 7 touchdowns with 478 yards. He is willing to go over the middle. He's willing to take a hit. He can play in both the slot and on the outside, kind of similar to Juju Smith-Schuster, who also went to USC. I think he could fall in the draft potentially to the third round, due in large part to that he's not a superior athlete. He is 6'2", 194 pounds, and I think he would fit what we're trying to do and could potentially replace a guy like Sterling Shepard in the future if the Giants feel like he is not in the long-term plans or goes down with an injury. We all know that we have injury concerns in this receiving core, whether it be Shepard, whether it be Kenny Golladay, or potentially could win out a starting job. Who knows in camp if he really impresses over a guy like Darius Slayton. But here's what they had to say at his pro day. He impressed scouts at his pro day, not with his respectable 40-yard dash time of 4.51, but with his performance in the on-field drills and other athletic tests that are better indicators of explosion and burst than running in a straight line unimpeded. His 38.5-inch vertical leap was impressive and displayed his ability to go up for contested catches, and his nearly 11-foot broad jump raised some eyebrows as well, further showing off his ability to explode from his stance. One other thing I want to pull up about St. Brown was his strengths. Crafted a variety of release techniques, smooth athlete with play body control, adjusts routes and scrambles open when the quarterback extends plays. Something that, a lot of people talked about last year. I remember people pointing that out about Dante Pettis, that we need receivers that could scramble and find ways to get open when the play breaks down. That is supposedly a strength of Amon-Ra St. Brown. Runs routes to create on lean defenders, smooth acceleration through route stems. And I'm not going to read the rest of it, but basically what he is an all-around wide receiver, a guy that can play on both the inside and the out. He has good height to him at 6'2", 194. He's not going to have blazing speed, but I think he's a good all-around wide receiver and something that the New York Giants should look to do in the third round of this year's draft if they don't draft a wide receiver in one of the first two rounds. The next guy I want to talk about was Paulson Adebo, I think it is actually rather pronounced, out of Stanford. He's a cornerback who stands at 6'1", 192. Now, his unofficial 40 time at the Stanford Pro Day was 4.42, and this may be a little bit late for him. I've seen him going in the third. I've seen him going back end second. I've seen him going fourth. I've even seen him going towards the fifth. So, again, the mock drafts, who knows where they're going to go. But in terms of a fit, I think he's a beautiful fit as a cornerback for the New York Giants for some depth. If a guy goes down, he could start. Again, this is the fourth round. You're not expecting to get immediate results out of a fourth round pick. And like I said at the top of this video, we don't know if James Bradberry is going to be here in the long term. We hope we extend him and he continues to play great. We don't know if Adoree Jackson is going to remain healthy and be in the long-term plans of the New York Giants. This is a guy that I think could sit, could learn, provide some valuable depth, maybe replace a guy like Sam Beal, and could be a potential starting corner in the NFL. After his freshman year, he really impressed out of Stanford. Most people had him pegged to go in the first round, or at least a future first-round draft prospect. His sophomore year, he got injured, and he actually disappointed in terms of play, and I think this year he actually sat out, which is why he's kind of fallen down mock draft charts. But he's tall, he's pretty fast at 4.42. Again, that's the pro day speed, but again, very versatile and very intelligent. But let's pull up some of the things that some people had to say about him. This from the Pro Football Network. Paulson Adebo aligns as a cornerback for the Cardinal defense. He plays that position with very good athleticism, as evidenced by his hips and overall agility well in coverage. He is a loose athlete with the hip flexibility to open and run upfield. He demonstrates good agility in off coverage to close separation at the top of the routes. He plays with the instincts and football IQ necessary to thrive in zone situations. He has very good ball skills to locate and track, while also demonstrating the competitiveness to close and get his hands on the football. Ideal role: outside-only cornerback with the potential to be an NFL starter. He has schematic versatility and the skill set to play in an NFL scheme. And I also read several other articles about how smart of a player Paulson Adebo is. So, someone to keep your eye on, maybe in the third to fourth round area, if in fact the New York Giants are looking to provide some more depth to that secondary for the future. But I wanted to point him out as well. Another prospect I wanted to bring up here is a running back prospect. Again, like I said at the top, you look at the running back room right now, I'm assuming we're going to lose Wayne Gallman. I think we could use another back in this backfield, not to mention we don't know how healthy Saquon Barkley will be at the start of the season. I'd be thinking about taking a running back as early as the fourth, or one of these two sixth-round picks. And that is why I went with Khalil Herbert out of Virginia Tech. And I will have another running back prospect in a future video, but this is a guy I actually really like. We're going to go over some of the notes. He stands at 5'9", 212 pounds. He had a good pro day, but the thing I really like about him, it seems like he's a complete back. They say he's a good run blocker. They say he's a good pass catcher. And he's rumored to be going in the 5th to 6th round area. So we'll see if the New York Giants do, in fact, take a running back in this year's draft. And if they do, a guy like Khalil Herbert could make a lot of sense. This is what he did at his pro day. Standing at just under 5'9", 210 pounds, 8.5-inch hands. Arms were 31 1/4, wingspan of 73 7/8. The 40 time, he ran a 4.46 with the vertical jump of 33 and a broad jump of 9.7. In terms of the notes on the prospect, he's an explosive ball carrier coming off a career campaign, patiently waits for blocks to develop, runs with balance as well as body control, and finds the open lanes. Possesses vision, follows blocks everywhere on the field, and keeps his feet moving. Makes defenders miss in the open field, creates yardage, and keeps plays alive. Possesses a burst of speed and beats defenders into the open field. Terrific pass catcher, extending his hands to make the reception away from his frame. Keeps the play in bounds whenever the ball is in his hands and consistently takes plays north and south. Possesses terrific blocking vision. So I thought he was an interesting prospect as well if the New York Giants are looking running back. So keep your eye on Khalil Herbert out of Virginia Tech. And I will post all the prospects' names that I liked in this draft in the comments below. Next up, and the final pick in this draft, is a guy that is really impressed, and maybe the Giants won't go with 2 wide receivers, but I think he could help as much in special teams as well, in terms of his impact with the New York Giants outside of the offense. That is where I think he'd be a contributor with the Giants if the Giants were to select Jalen Darden, standing at 5'8" out of North Texas, but this guy is an explosive player. He's known as a good route runner. He creates separation. And he actually had a very impressive pro day. And I think he's another guy, a late-round flyer that you may want to keep an eye on. And he's a guy that really impressed at his pro day. In terms of his strength, set a slew of all-time North Texas receiving records, had 31 receiving touchdowns over 21 games, averaged 132 yards per game in 2020, offers instant gadget package potential. So a guy that you can bring in sub packages, things like that. Loose hips for tight cuts and breaks, turbo-boosted acceleration and long speed, can stem and slingshot past off-man coverage into easy separation, creates nightmares for safeties in space, has wiggle and juice to pile on yards after the catch. And then also wanted to pull up this. Before his route running grabbed the attention of all 29 NFL teams in attendance, it was a quality 40-yard dash time that made sure they saw him. Darden had an unofficial 4.46 time on his 40 and showed he had the speed to go with his absurd quickness. Before that, he completed all the measurables, checking in at 5'7" and 7 inches and 174 pounds. Then he recorded a vertical jump of 35.5 inches, a broad jump of 10 feet 2 inches, and then did great in his shuttle and 3-cone drills. His weaknesses, very slightly built with small hands, which you would expect at 5'8". Frequently faced single coverage against slower corners in college. Leans into breaks, giving away pathways to coverage. Not a fan of working into the middle of safeties lurking, obviously because of his small stature. Unable to overcome size liability in contested catches. Not much of a catch radius in any direction, which is why he's a 6th-round prospect. But I think he's definitely a guy, and he actually performed very well in special teams as well at North Texas, that could help us there. And a guy that seems good if you could get him out in open space. So those are some of the prospects I wanted to go over with you guys, and some guys that I'm interested in as a New York Giants fan. I'm going to do a ton more of these. I'm going to, present other late-round draft prospects that I'm interested in and kind of demonstrate, based off what we do in the first round, how it could impact the 2nd and 3rd rounds of this year's draft. But for my first mock draft, I hope you guys enjoyed it. Again, we took Slater, an offensive lineman, in the first. We took Trion out of Washington for the edge rusher in the 2nd round. We took Amon-Ra St. Brown, the wide receiver, in the 3rd. Paulson Adebo, the cornerback, out of Stanford, in the 4th, with Khalil Herbert and Jalen Darden with our 2 6th-round picks. As always, guys, if you like what you watch, please subscribe. Drop a comment. Maybe give me a little thumbs up. Cheers.